let's talk about one of the most overused and frankly misunderstood words in the entire business world: insight, right? We hear it all the time, but what does it actually mean? Well, today we're going to cut through all the buzzwords and give you a really simple but powerful framework to spot a real insight. We're calling it the 4 pillars.
Okay, picture this. I'm sure you've been in this exact meeting. A manager points to a super busy dashboard, maybe a chart with a little green arrow pointing up, and they proudly say, "This is our insight." But then there's that killer question that just kind of hangs in the air, followed by that awkward silence. How did that number, that chart, that so-called insight, actually help anyone make a decision? That gap, the one between just having a piece of data and actually making a better choice, that's exactly what we're going to close today. And this brings us right to what I like to call the insight illusion, this widespread confusion between just presenting data and actually truly understanding it. So here's the absolute crucial distinction you have to make. An insight isn't just a number you pull from some report. It is not just another metric on a trend line. It's a total reframing of the problem itself. It's that aha moment that changes your entire perspective. So let's get a really clear definition on the table. An insight is a cognitive shift. It's a reinterpretation of reality that leads you to take different actions than you would have taken without it. And that's the key, right? If your actions don't change, it wasn't an insight. Simple as that. And this is exactly where we all get trapped in this tangled mess of data, right? We confuse a simple metric for its real meaning. We see 2 things moving together, a correlation, and we scream causation, and we mistake this mountain of raw information for actual usable insight. And listen, getting stuck in that mess isn't just playing with words. It directly weakens a company's ability to make smart decisions.
So how do we escape this insight illusion? How do we cut through all of that noise? Well, we need a system. We need a framework for clarity. And here it is. Based on some great research from STL Digital, a true high-quality insight has to stand on 4 pillars: alignment, relevance, specificity, and novelty. Think of it like a checklist. If a finding doesn't check all 4 of these boxes, guess what? It's not a real insight. So let's break this down, shall we? Let's put these pillars into action, one by one, and see how they work. First up, we have alignment. This is basically the so what test. A true insight has to connect directly to a core business objective, a strategic goal, a key performance indicator, or a critical decision that's on the table right now. If it doesn't, it's just trivia. It's an interesting fact, but it's not an insight. And here's how alignment separates the noise from the signal. A weak observation is just a fact, like mobile sessions increased by 12%. Okay, and an aligned insight adds that critical business context. Mobile sessions went up, sure, but it didn't move the needle on revenue or conversions. Therefore, it's not a priority for us right now. You see the difference? One is just a number, the other connects that number to actual business impact. Next up is pillar 2, relevance. Now, this one sounds super obvious, but honestly, it's where so many companies get totally lost. A relevant insight has to directly answer a real and important business question that you've already asked. Instead of just collecting data for the sake of it, you should be trying to answer questions like these. Why are our sales down? Why is retention suddenly dropping? Which customer segment is actually driving our profitability? Which feature stops people from leaving? Where is the bottleneck in our process? See, when data doesn't answer a real question, it's just decoration for your slides. All right, next up is pillar 3, specificity. This is where the rubber really meets the road. An insight can't be some vague, fuzzy observation. It has to be sharp enough to point you towards a concrete next step. It has to explain the what, the why, and give you a clear direction for action. And this is a perfect example of that. A general observation is, our conversion rate fell by 3%. Okay, that's a problem statement, not an insight. But a specific insight sounds like this. Conversion dropped 3% because the new checkout created friction for our iPhone users. It was a UI regression from last month's release. Boom. Now you know the cause, you know the segment, you know the event, and you know exactly what your team needs to go fix. That's actionable. And finally, we have pillar 4, novelty. And this is the holy grail. It's the most powerful and honestly the rarest of them all. A novel insight reveals something you didn't just not know. It reveals something that actively contradicts what you thought you knew.
It shatters your assumptions, it exposes a critical blind spot, and it forces you to see your entire business in a completely new light. Novelty is what can change a company's entire direction. For years, maybe the assumption was our most loyal customers are in the 35 to 50 age range. But a novel insight reveals that the highest repeat purchase rate actually comes from a much younger group, say 22 to 28, who all follow a very specific path to purchase. Now, that's not just an interesting fact. That is a strategic game changer that could redefine your entire marketing budget. So, we've got this clear four-part framework. It seems simple enough, right? So why then do so many organizations still get it wrong day after day? Well, the answer takes us beyond the dashboard. If you were to actually score most corporate reports against these four pillars, the result would be pretty grim. Alignment to a real strategy? Often missing. Relevance to a key question? Maybe partially. Specificity to guide action? Almost never. And genuine novelty that changes how you think? Well, that's the unicorn. It's incredibly rare. And let's be crystal clear about this. The problem is not a lack of data. Oh my gosh, we are all drowning in data. The real problem is a lack of evaluative discipline. It's the simple failure to just stop and apply some critical thinking, to ask if a finding truly meets these four simple criteria.
Which brings us right back to that core idea. Insight is not a data artifact you just put on a slide. It's a moment of recognition. It creates a clear before and after in how your organization thinks about a problem.
A real insight, it feels like a breakthrough. It's that moment in the room when someone just says, wait a minute, we have always assumed that X causes Y, but what if it doesn't? Or it sounds like this. Wow, we have been completely ignoring this customer segment, and it turns out they might actually be the most valuable ones we have. That's a shift in thinking. So the next time you're in a meeting and someone presents you with an insight, just run it through this simple final test. Ask yourself, did my thinking change? Did it shift my perspective on what to do next? If the answer is no, then you know it wasn't a real insight at all.